And welcome back, everyone, to Pokemon Team Creation Series from Nazareth Hussein and Rainbow Prism. What is the Pokemon team of Mr. Krabs? So, look, Mr. Krabs actually isn't too complicated. It wasn't that hard making a team for him. Obviously, I gotta put at least one or two Krab Pokemon on the team. But which Krabs were the honest ones? His starter, I think, is Kingler, mostly because it's got the big, meaty claws. Well, at least the one. Kinglers are actually really powerful in terms of they got like 130 base attack. Hell, Krabby has 110 or 105. They're just slow and don't have the best special moves at all. But still. Now, that being said, however, I think this being a starter works perfectly fine. You may see some Pokemon later, you go, why isn't that his starter? Because he had to start somewhere. He actually, when looking into his backstory, he started out poor. So being a little crabby and then going to be the king of the Krusty Krab. That makes sense, you know? Also, he was a sailor, so having water-type Pokemon makes sense. And because of that, I also decided to go with Crabominable, because he was a sailor and a pirate at one point. I believe it was his uncle was a pirate. And so having a much more powerful Krab there to kind of be the muscle of the group makes a lot of sense. Now, before we go into any more, let's talk about some of the Krabs that did not make the list. Obviously, you'll notice Cloth is not on this list. Why? Honestly, I can't think of too many reasons why he shouldn't be on the team. But I like the idea of at least a little type variety with Crabominable when it comes to that. Also, with Crawdon, that's a lobster / crayfish. It's not a crab, so that wasn't going to be an option either. With that being said, however, you can't talk about Mr. Krabs without talking about his daughter. He has an adopted daughter who's a whale called Pearl. Her name's Pearl. So I knew I had to put a Pokemon on team that was going to be Pearl. The problem is she's a sperm whale, and there is not to this day a sperm whale Pokemon. You have the mon I did chose, Whalmer, which I think works fine enough, and then Whale Lord, which I was definitely not going to do Whale Lord. I wanted to, whatever it was going to be its base stage due to the fact that it is his daughter and she's a kid. But then you have Cetitan and Citadel. That one didn't really make sense to me. Again, it's just simply due to the fact that design-wise, there's not a lot of logic behind that one. And if we're talking about who I think is kind of closer to Pearl, neither are good options. I would go with Whalmer, though, just again because he's a crab and lives under the sea. However, Mr. Krabs, among everything else, is a businessman and insanely greedy. So he would love a Pokemon on his team that could actually gain him cash. And what better way than the Mon that learns Payday? Persian. Why Persian? Well, because he's an older gentleman. He'd be an experienced trainer at this point, so most, if not all, of his Pokemon would be fully evolved, except for 2. Now, Persian's also being a normal type is versatile enough. It's not overly strong. It's super fast. It's got 110 speed, and at best it has 70 special attack. Everything else is just kind of meh. But it's still a Mon I think he would keep around. That being said, though, as a man who collects money, hoards it like the devil, or a dragon, Gimmighoul, the Pokemon that actually collects coins. This is a logical step for someone like Mr. Krabs, who is obsessed with wealth and money and amassing as much of it as he can. But he's been in this business so long, he's actually on his second Gimmighoul. Instead, his final and his ace Pokemon is Golden Go, a Pokemon that hasn't made it onto these videos yet. And that's because once you collect 1,000 coins, Gimmighoul, and then level up, Gimmighoul evolves. So it would make sense that he probably has had a Gimmighoul along with Krabby long ago. And along with amassing his earnings, he's also amassed all these coins that allowed Gimmighoul to turn the Golden Go. So he's already on to his next Gimmighoul. In fact, if you wanted to get technical, I could cut out the Persian and the Crabominable and just put 3 Golden Goes on there if you wanted. And that wouldn't necessarily be wrong to do. But the idea of Payday, earning Mr. Krabs money, he probably invests in ethers and elixirs just so he can just max out, and HP ups or PP ups just so he can max out Payday to get as much cash as he can. That would be totally up his avenue to do. So how does this team look in terms of weaknesses and strengths? Well, the 2 water Pokemon get clapped by both grass and electric. That's a given. The normal and the ice type with Crabominable get clapped by fighting. Unfortunately, fighting is only neutral to itself, so it's not going to resist itself. The ice and the steel type with Golden Go, Crabominable again, are weak to fire. The 2 ghost types are weak to ghosts, and the 2 ghost types are also weak to dark. And really, in terms of weaknesses, that's it. There's no one major weakness for this team. It's more just kind of spaced out among the group. That being said, for all its weaknesses, this team actually has more strengths than weaknesses. 3 of them are strong against ground when it comes to Crabominable's ice and the 2 water Pokemon. 4 of these Mon are strong against rock with your 2 water types, your fighting types, and your steel type and Golden Ghost. So rock types are going to get clipped by this team. Fire's got 2 weaknesses in water, obviously. Ice has got 2 weaknesses with the steel and the fighting type. Psychic's got 2 weaknesses with the 2 ghost types. And Ghost has got 2 weaknesses with the 2 ghost types as well. So, surprisingly, a lot of the weaknesses are also strengths on this team. So it's kind of balanced out. In terms, though, of how well this team would actually do in a playthrough, I've got some bad news for you, Mr. Krab team players. Now, if you so choose, I would encourage you to, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, nope, Krabby, no, I had to take it back. Krabby, I don't believe you can find in Paldea. Otherwise, I think you can find nearly all these guys in Scarlet and Violet. Krabby and Wailmer, I take that back too. So you couldn't do this team in Paldea. But anyway, Kanto. Honestly, you should be fine with Brock. No problem. Krabby's going to clip Brock's wings. They can also learn Metal Claw now at this point. But then Misty, you go about neutral with, but you will have enough power on your side to take her down. Surge will be your first real test, because you're going to, unfortunately, have 2 Mon weak straight to electric. Crabominable, though, should, because it is a Mon now that evolves not because of location, but through stone evolution. You should be able to, you can have it basically as of the second gym in these playthroughs. You should be able to have it available, and it should be bulky enough to get through Raichu, Voltorb, all that. And that's not to say that, say, Krabby or Wailmer are guaranteed to go down in one hit, particularly Wailmer, which has a lot of bulk to it. So it might not go down in 1 hit. It still probably will go down, though, in 2 hits, though. But yeah, Surge will be your first big problem. Then you're going to get through Erica, no problem. Koga is a little tricky to deal with, as you don't have any real strong Mon for Koga. And your Gimme Ghoul is just not going to actually be all that useful in any of these playthroughs. So you're pretty much fighting with 5 Mon throughout most of these. But because of the ice and the water, you could probably get through Koga. Then Golden Go can get you through Sabrina, no problem. Honestly, no joke, you won't have any issues until you hit the Elite Four. Because Blaine's not going to be a problem. You got 2 water types on the team. Kingler alone's physical attack's going to cleave through a lot of it. Giovanni's ground mostly, and ground and rock mostly, with I think like 2 poison types too. So again, no real issue. Lorelei, you actually won't really have that big of an issue with, as you have a fighting type and a steel type deal with the ice. Bruno would in theory be difficult, but because you have Golden Go and it's immune to fighting, you should be fine. It's Agatha where you're going to run into your first really big issue, because she is a poison ghost specialist, mostly a poison specialist actually. And while Golden Go is certainly immune to poison, it's not immune to ghost, and it can only do so much. It is not going to be able. I hesitate to think it can take down the entirety of her team. In fact, if you're playing smart, you're probably going to want to switch out, keep it only for the ghost types and try your hardest with the rest of them. I'm not saying it's impossible, it just would be very difficult. And then Lance, being Dragon, you do have 1 ice type on the team, but it's slow as hell. Crabominals are not fast, which means that thing is going to go down. It might take 1 or 2 Mon with it, but it's going down. And then you really have only a Mon that resists Dragon, thanks to Steel. It's not impossible, I don't think, but it is difficult. Now, granted, Persian can learn ice attacks. I don't think it learns it naturally, though, so that's a problem. And then you got to deal with Blue. It's a very resounding no, I think, because you're going to struggle all throughout the Elite Four, I think, really. At least through half of it. Then in Johto, honestly, you don't have any problems until Chuck. Faulkner, you're both neutral to each other, but you got the better attack stat. Bugsy, you should be fine. Whitney, this is one of those times you're going to cleave through Whitney, quite frankly, because Rock is resisted by fighting, and you have a fighting type Crabominable. So Whitney, you just get right through. Morty, you should be fine. If it is Chuck that's the problem. Because at that point, you don't have Golden Go yet, so you only have Gimme Ghoul. While it is immune to fighting type moves, it's not immune to things like water type moves that I believe Poliwrath has at least one. And then you have your two other Mon, your ice type and your normal type, which are also weak to fighting. And that leaves you only with two water types. What the Primate will probably go down, no problem. It's the Poliwrath that's going to be the biggest issue. Is it impossible? I don't think so. Is it likely? I don't think so either. But if you did manage it, you should be fine all the way to Claire. Claire's taking down that Crabominable. So that means you're going to have to rely more on Golden Go. Again, I don't think it's likely, but not impossible. When we get to the Elite Four, honestly, your biggest issues are probably going to be Koga and, sorry, not Koga. Will actually won't be a problem. Golden Go can probably handle Will on its own, sorry. And Koga shouldn't be that big of a problem thanks to not being able to be poisoned due to steel typing. And then Bruno, again, won't be that big an issue. Honestly, I think you're stopped at Karen. Because not only does she have dark types on the team. Now you might think, oh, she got dark types. Well, I'll use my fighting type. But she's also got a Houndoom on the team. And that Crabominable will not outspeed the Houndoom. Fire attacks will put that thing down pretty quick. Even if you manage it, you still got to get through Lance. And this Lance is far stronger than the previous Lance. You're not getting past him. You're just not. So that's a no-go on Johto. Honestly, you might be stopped in Hoenn just at Brawly. This is due to the fact that you'll have a fighting type, ice type. Your Kingler's not evolved yet. And because of that, the ice is going to actually... If you had Crab Brawler instead, you actually have a better shot. But the fact is that you added a weakness on with the ice type when going up against Brawly. Now, that being said, you do have the stat advantage over Hitmon. So, I don't think it's impossible. But then you got to deal with Watson, who's electric type. And the fighting type can pretty much help you through it, depending if you're playing Emerald or Ruby or Sapphire. The fighting type will help you out definitely against, say, the Magnetons, assuming that you don't get paralyzed or anything like that. Not impossible, but I'm not holding my breath on it. Then you also got to deal with Norman, whose Slack King is just... Ugh. The only advantage you have there is that your ghost types are immune to him, so you should be able to manage it. But then after that, you honestly would have a relatively clean run up until the Elite Four. And at that point, then even if you made it to pass to, I'm going to say you don't make it past, Drake just stopgaps you right there. There's no way Crabominable can take on that entire team. It's just not happening with his slow ass. But honestly, you don't even get past Nate, I don't think. Because he's got Shiftry and he's got Cacturn, which means he can take care of both your ghost types and both your water types alone. Which leaves you just with Persian and Crabominable. Now, Crabominable can take care of the both those Mon. Shiftry, though, is faster, so it's still getting a hit in. Then you still have to also deal with Mighty Anna and Sharpedo and Absol. I honestly don't know if you're getting past Nate. Like Crabominable's fighting type would be the thing to use, but I don't know if you can get past him, honestly. Because most of his Mon outspeed your Crabominable. Like, let me just double check that speed stat on Crabominable real quick. Just so I'm not disillusioned here about how fast he really is. Because as far as I know, he is a slow-ass crab. Anyway, meanwhile, so yeah, you're not becoming the champion of Hoenn. You're also not becoming the champion of Sinnoh. Now, with Sinnoh, I do think you could get through the first few. I think you'd struggle a little bit with. Think words here. You would struggle a little bit with, say, Rorik at first because the faster Mon with like Cranidos, but I think you can manage it. I also know you'd probably be able to get past Gardenia no problem thanks to having an ice type. Maylene might be a problem though. Even though at that point you will have a fully evolved Kingler and you will have a Wailmer on the team and Crabominable is fully evolved. The Lucario I think is just too big of a gap to cross. If you're playing Platinum, however, that means you'll be able to go through
Fatine at first, which I think you could do. Then you'd go through Crasher Wake, if I'm not mistaken. Then you'd go through Maylene. And that at that point, you're still at a disadvantage, but you are in a better spot. Honestly, if you can get past all of them, you'd have no issues until Wagner, due to just a very varied electric team. By the way, I was right. Crabominable is slow as hell. 43 speed. That is slow. It's still not even the slowest thing I'm seeing on this list right now. Like, freaking Avalug's got 28 speed. That's nuts. That's just ridiculous. Hell, Hisuian Avalug is actually faster. Figure that out. By 10. Figure that crap out. Anyway, so yeah, it doesn't look good for you when you're in Sinnoh, because even then you still got to deal with the Elite Four. Bertha and Aaron, I actually don't think are that big of an issue. Flint though is a problem. Your team is not very well equipped for a non-fire team, if that's the best way to put it, because he's got an Infernape, which will decimate your ass. Like, forget it. Your biggest hitters, Golden Go, Crabominable, even Persian for what it's worth, down in an instant. Close combat fire attacks, done. Your only hope is Kingler and Whalmer. And Infernape outspeeds nearly everything on this team. Like, I think Infernape actually outspeeds even Golden Go, who is fast. Golden Go is fast. So, yeah, I think you're stopped at Flint if you were able to get to the Elite Four. Even if you could get to Cynthia, she would cleave you in half. So, no. Unova, I'll make it very simple. No, you cannot be the champion. Honestly, Elisa is going to be a problem right at the gate. Like, I don't think you can get past that 4th gym leader. It's just, I don't think it happens. Even if it does, you're still going to struggle with both the Dragon-type gym leaders. You're going to struggle with Marlon, the Ghost Elite Four member. And then you got to deal with Alder and Iris, who've got a full half Dragon, half other thing team with nothing really good to deal with on this team, stat-wise or otherwise. And then you got to deal with Alder, who you have no answers for bugs on his team, and half his team is bugs. Not to mention Bug Steel, Bug Fire, which, yeah, you got water, but at that point your water's probably done. Not to mention Drudagon, Vanillish, or Vanillux, and Buffalon. The Buffalon alone is a problematic mod because it's just beefy. So then you go to Kalos. Honestly, except for Karina, you can get through the gyms in the Elite Four, I think, without too much difficulty. Karina's the only issue there, because that Halucha, flying press, flying, and fighting damage, no joke, could cleave your entire team very quickly. Now, the only advantage you really have is that water's not weak to flying, so it's not impossible, but your Crabominable would not help you in this gym. So I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it doesn't look good. But that said, you could get all the way through Elite Four, and then you're going to get completely decimated by Diantha. Again, the Halucha, your Kingler's probably going down quick, and Crabominable wouldn't last very long. And then you have Tyrantium, and at that point, even if you get past that, Aurora, it's just not a good setup. This team is not designed very well for combat. Galar, you're done by Milo. I'm just going to cut it short right here. Because you start with a Krabby, you're not beating Milo. You're not. You're just not. You can't do it. Even with a high attack power, it's slow as hell, and grass beats water. So there you go. Paldea, honestly, you would struggle a bit with the Iono, but ultimately, I think because Crabominable's got beefy enough stats, you should be fine. It's really when you get to the Elite Four that's the problem. And now Rika's not the problem. Rika, you actually probably could handle no problem because you have 3 Mon Strong against ground. Great, wonderful. Poppy, you only got 1 Mon Strong against Steel. And while it's slow, while Steel, a lot of her Steel types are slow, not as slow as this thing, which means they're going to knock that thing out. And at that point, you got nothing. Nothing. You got neutral water, Ghost for some special damage, but ultimately, you're not getting past Poppy. Even if you do, Larry is going to take out your Crabominable, one of your big hitters, very quick because he's a flying specialist. Hassel is a freaking dragon specialist, and his Baxcalibur is going to be immune to ice or neutral ice. So ultimately, you're kind of SOL in this region, and you're SOL basically as a gym leader or as a challenger. Like, you just don't have a team that's very well built for these things. Even if I were to fully evolve both Golden Goes and evolve the Whalmer, I don't think the results would change that much. For example, if we're talking about all the places I think you stop, you might be able to handle blue better. And then with like Lance, I don't think it really matters for Lance in this version. I think you'd be taken out by Lance. I still think you're not making it past Nate, if I'm going to be very honest. And even still, definitely not past Drake. You're not making it past Cynthia. You're not making it past either Alder or Iris. You're not beating Diantha, I don't think. You're not beating Leon, even if you were to get past Milo, which you still wouldn't. But even you're not beating Leon, and you're not beating. I believe it or not, you're not beating Gita. I don't think. It just these aren't teams that are really well designed for a playthrough. But prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. See if you can make it work. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this team. What would you do differently, or do you love it as it is? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you later, though.